can quickly just find my questions again. All right, so we were on new shares again last time. So you were about to tell me how exactly does the share, how does the share and the dividend process work?
Sure. So the dividends, yes. Basically, the dividends come from the NuBits proceeds. If a custodian of sales is able to sell NuBits, he will get most of the time Bitcoins as proceeds, and he or she would, depending on the motion that has been voted, would distribute one portion of that as dividends. This was the mechanism that was in place at the beginning, but now the shareholders have decided to not to distribute dividend, but to run buybacks of shares.
Okay.
Because with the dividends, the problem there's one problem is that you would distribute dividends in terms of peer coins, to any address, to any peer coin address that is derived from a new share address.
Okay.
There are some addresses that some people have lost the keys for those addresses, so it would be that will cause some waste, Whereas with buybacks, all the proceed will all the proceed will be used for 100%.
Okay, so in other words, the concern with paying out, so the original process was people would buy up peer coins and pay out the peer coins because the peer coin addressing system maps to the NuBits addressing system.
The
new shares addressing system. So, but the problem was because because obviously there are dead keys and there's lost shares, that dividends are now getting paid out to, but basically getting burned. Right, so some of your peer coins that you would have been paid out are getting burned. So what they've decided to do instead is to reward the active shareholders by instead buying up shares, like buying up new shares, basically, and thereby increasing the value by some relative amount.
Yeah, this is one reason. The second reason that we want also to increase the value of the new shares, because in a way you can say that NuBits or the value of NuBits are backed by new shares that are the assets of the organization. So in case of a peg that if we have a peg that is being lost or getting difficult to maintain, one of the last results would be to issue new shares. So at the time, it's much better to have a good price. That's why it's important to increase the value.
Okay, so walk me through the scenario where, as the case of last resort, where you issue new shares to stabilize the NuBit price.
Yeah, basically the peg is maintained by different tiers. There are 6 tiers, 6 layers.
Okay. Well, walk me through those 6 tiers. That's a good.
Yeah, the first one is called the tier 1, which is basically the liquidity on the order books. You can find in exchange, right?
Okay.
The second tier is tier 2, and it's basically the liquidity, but that is not on the order books. That is just on exchange, but is not put into order.
Okay.
And then you have the third tier, which is the liquidity that is outside of exchange.
Okay.
But is held into addresses that are controlled by shareholders, And then you have the tier 4, which is the reserve in Bitcoin or Peercoin, but now it's also in NuBits. If we want to bring to markets NuBits very quickly, then we'll ask the NuBits reserve manager to do so. This is the tier 4. And then you have the fifth layer, the fifth tier, which is basically the manipulation of interest rates. So in a way, if you if you increase the interest rates,
Okay.
then you would take out of circulation NuBits, so it would in a way increase buy side liquidity, right? And then you have the last resort, which is the new shares. If you issue new shares, sorry.
How do new shares? How do issuing new shares protect the value of a NuBit, for instance? What is the process? Do you issue the new shares and then buy up NuBits with the new shares, or what is the plan?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if shareholders decide to use this tier, the 6th tier, then yes, someone will will issue new shares inside an address, right? And there will be one elected custodian of this address, and he will bring or she will bring the new shares on the market, sells them and then take the proceeds in terms of Bitcoin, right? Most of the time, and then buy NuBits with those Bitcoins and burn eventually.
Okay, but so just walk me through it again, right? So the first one is basically the first tier is the actual money in the exchanges that is getting operated by the NuBot.
Sure.
Okay, what is tier 2?
Tier 2 is the liquidity, the funds that are inside the exchange but not put on orders.
Okay, and then tier 3?
Tier 3 is the money, the funds that are outside the exchange.
Okay, so in other words, I am a believer in NuBits, or I'm a custodian. I have $1 million. I haven't necessarily sent it to an exchange, but it's basically lying there in wait just specifically for that thing. All right, so tier 4 you were saying?
Tier 4 is the reserves, BTC reserve, Bitcoin reserves, or NuBits reserves that can be used, but it can time. The higher in the higher the layer, the quicker it would be, used as if you want to maintain the peg, right?
Okay, all right, and then the second, the fifth one is basically the interest rate or the parking, and the sixth one is basically
shares.
Yeah. Okay. So in other words, in that case, you devalue. You basically like transfer the devaluation of NuBits. You transfer that rather to your new shares so that you can maintain the product, which is the NuBits.
Yeah.
Okay, I must say that's a genius freaking system. I'm really I'm very impressed.
Okay.
So what that does impress me that I was unaware of was that the parking rate has been at 0 for a while. I mean, that's actually that sounds like a very, very positive, development.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We basically we had to maintain maybe 5 for a few weeks, 5% for the 3 months. Back in February, March 2015, after the NuBits has undergone 3 hacks or 4 hacks. I mean we used to have to be some exchange, 4 exchanges that were accepting NuBits were hacked, and we lost a lot of shareholder money at the time.
Okay, well, tell me about those hacks. So you say currently your primary pool is on Poloniex.
Exactly.
Polony, I don't know how to pronounce that actually. But so on the Polony one, all right, and then so there were 4 major. Were these 4 different exchanges that were hacked in sequence, and then large pools of NuBits disappeared from those exchanges?
Yeah, I mean at the time there were the pool didn't exist. It was just first of all it was one single provider. He managed the money, or she managed the money, I don't know, maybe a few 100,000 NuBits worth of money, and it was the money of the shareholders, right? But right now we are using pools, so pools, several people can contribute to the pool, and first of all, and then and it's not the shareholder. I mean, it's not the money of the shareholders, right? So even if they lose this money, it wouldn't impact the assets of Nu.
Okay.
So it's a big difference, big difference,
Okay, when you say the assets of the shareholders, explain that to me. How do you mean the assets of the shareholders?
Assets meaning the funds that are that are owned by the decentralized organization. So
Okay.
it could be the reserve, or it could be the proceeds from the sales of NuBits, for example.
Okay.
Or it could be also the money invested by the shareholders, because as a shareholder, I invested some money to buy the shares, right? So this money, for example.
Okay. So when you say like the funds owned by the shareholders, so in other words, the way of thinking about it is that the shareholders appoint a custodian and they issue the custodian X amount of NuBits arguments X. So those are the assets of the shareholders. That's how you view it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And that brings me to another interesting question, given that I was pretty like sure that the parking rate would still be in effect though. What do you suspect NuBits are being used for? I mean, well, what do you suspect obviously the major use case is, you want cryptocurrency, or you are a pork fest attending libertarian, and and you just don't want to constantly worry whether or not you can pay rent. So you park a lot of it in just in NuBits, just to hedge against the volatility of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrency. But what are some other uses that you suspect are actually happening? What are you guys hearing?
Yeah, as I said, right now the biggest use case, or the major one, is for if for traders that want to hedge volatility of the Bitcoin, right? So, but obviously, ultimately, everybody, every shareholder has this dream of or this goal to have NuBits adopted by any merchants on the internet, right? But yeah, so I think ultimately this is the goal. And myself, my company, basically, we paid a designer from Japan. I mean, we paid a designer that did some work for us, that was based in the Netherlands, basically. And we sent like 1,000 NuBits for his work, So
Okay,
we
so
actually use NuBits as a way of payment. It was very effective because it was almost immediate and no transaction fee. So it was very, very effective for us.
Okay, so in other words, the other nice thing about it is this is a nice international payment mechanism, to
Sure.
use them. All right.
Yeah.
All right. So, but you're not like aware of any other strange uses that people have come up with.
I'm aware of one startup that is trying to use NuBits, or I think using NuBits as a way for remittance. I mean,
Okay.
it's linked to what? Yeah, the same kind of use case as me, right? So.
Okay. So basically, they're just using different remittances. All right. So as I understand, like the network as well. Sorry for this background noise. This is very unexpected. Okay. So as I understand.
Yeah, I can. Sorry to interrupt you. I can think also recently someone from the community came up with the idea of using NuBits as a proof of burn. If you want to, let's say, reduce spam in your email, you will ask someone to prove that he has or she has burned some NuBits. So it could be used as anti-spam, for example.
Okay, that's very interesting. So in other words, pay me like to send me mail, you have to have burnt 1 microcent.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
This was an idea, and would be this is one of his next projects, because now he's dealing with integrating NuBots with the automatic liquidity providing pool. But after that, he said that he would start working on this proof of burn.
Proof of burn for anti-spam. Okay. Tell me something else, right? So you guys, okay, so your blockchain can actually, like, it already trades at these two securities, so the new shares and the NuBits, separately. I believe if people are interested in that, they can just go read the white paper on it. But a question I have as well, okay, so you guys have now, okay, they've passed motions now to extend your blockchain to include some other currencies. Talk us through that.
Yeah, so recently, a few weeks ago, a motion to add new products to our offering has been voted and has passed. And so it's one of the is in the works to create NuBits that are pegged to other fiat money, different from dollar. So one to the yuan and to the euro and to the SDR, basically.
Okay, so it's the euro, the yuan, and the SDR. Okay, I can definitely understand the yuan and the euro. Why the SDR? Why did you guys
Yeah,
decide to
good
take
question. Because as you know, there is in the cryptocurrency sphere, a lot of people are against fiat money because of the fact that it's issued by central banks, and they really don't like the power of the central bank. So the idea was to use another stable instrument, different from fiat money, to change the perception. But
Oh, we seem to have lost connection. Hey,
sorry for
Pascal,
that.
sorry. Okay, sorry. I don't know if that was, I pressed something on my keyboard and you disappeared.
No problem.
My apologies. Okay, so you were saying it's to change the perception of.
Yeah, SDR. So it's special drawing right. So it's a basket of currency, right? So at the end, it's just fiat money. It's just a basket of fiat money, right? But so it doesn't change so much from just a single currency. But some people think that it's it's better than just pegging to one currency, right?
Okay, why did they not decide to rather peg it to an ounce of gold, for instance?
That's a good question. Some people came up with this idea, but they didn't get so much momentum. So I don't know, maybe in we really like, basically we are not against the central banks. We just want to collaborate with them because I think we could, I mean, in my case, I think that the central banks were not so bad at maintaining the peg, basically. So we should use their know-how about how to maintain the peg. So
Okay. All right. So on that question of like central banks and pegs and stuff, I mean, given how aggressive the Chinese government can get about monetary policy, do you guys suspect that that there might be some negative side effects of now having created a new yuan?
So the question is that if there are some bad sides about that.
I mean, basically, do you think that there would be any sort of like an objection from the Chinese central bank, to the concept of new yuans existing? That they would block your network, that they would try DDoS attacks, that they would, I mean, things that we know that they've done before, not necessarily the central bank directly, but definitely the governing bodies of China.
So the good question. Right now, I mean, obviously, there is no. I mean, assuming that new yuan has a lot of a lot of people are using that. I think it's not the same as capital going into Bitcoins. That money will go into new yuan, which is pegged to the yuan. So I think it will. On the contrary, I think it would contribute to the role of the new yuan. So I'm in my case, I don't think the central bank would be against that. But
well, again, I mean, I'm massively for the whole concept of cryptocurrencies, especially like something that is stable and has a heck of a lot of great uses, But I mean, if how can I say? I mean, the case can be made that let's say that 1 billion new yuan ends up getting created, right? and let's say that the base money supply of yuan is 1 trillion yuan, or let's make it 100 billion yuan. That means that 1% of their money supply is outside of their control.
So yeah, in that case, yeah, it would be a problem for them if they really want to control everything, right? Of course, yeah.
Yes. I mean, it can get a very interesting thing. Just on that point, actually, what I find interesting about like NuBits specifically is that, I mean, if you look at the history of the dollar, I mean, as far as I understand, there was some, I think it's either in Austria or Germany, there was this valley called the Missing Dollar Valley, and there was a mint in there, and they made the Missing Dollar, which was like a 1 ounce silver coin. And from there, we got the word thaler, and from there, we got the word dollar eventually, and I mean, the US basically, they had the same system. And I mean, it's the network effects of this one unit of measure that has come along. And because at a certain point there was more, like I said, more of the network moved from this physical element to actually like the deposit, the deposit slips for the physical element, that the deposit slips gained more of a network effect than the original like dollar. And then basically because of, I would argue, I mean, it's one part usurpation, one part, just natural network effects of being able to transmit them through accounting books. The dollar became sort of like, managed by the American government. But what's interesting for me basically is, I mean, that process of going from a mint to a security deposit to a, fiat instrument, I think what's interesting is it can actually go from being a fiat instrument to being a stably pegged cryptocurrency. And if at a certain point, I mean, it's in the NuBits white paper as well, but if at a certain point there's a critical mass of people who now use a system like NuBits instead of the actual dollar, they can decide. And I mean, I don't even necessarily think they need to be the majority. I think this could happen at like 10%. If they have some very small amount of critical mass and they decide, you know what, we don't like the fact that the dollar is now devaluing at 5% a month, we are going to take our part of the network and break it off. We are going to define some other way of saying this is what a NuBit is worth. And what's interesting about that is it's like the dollar will continue to live on sort of like in a spiritual sense. It'll no longer be controlled by by one central body, but it could be because, I mean, really the protocol is apathetic as to what the real value of the dollar is. The protocol, as you've described now, responds to effectively what the new shareholders want. If they have them, critical mass of the network, they can shift that. They can decide, well, the dollar is now something else, and the Fed can go fly a kite. They don't care. Because you can then decide to say that, okay, well, we now have, let's say, argument's sake, 20 million users, and we believe that these 20 million users have enough use cases between each other to say that we should no longer subject them to the inflation rates of the United States dollar, or something to that effect. Do you agree with that? Do you think that's too ridiculous?
No. It's if the shareholder wants to, for example, to take into account the inflation rate of the dollar, then we could pass a motion to just adjust to that and have a stable NuBits with no inflation. You just need to change the feeds that NuBits is using to maintain the peg, right? So it's just a problem of algorithm, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's fascinating to me. I mean, the fact that this system works is phenomenal to me. I mean, it blows my mind that it.
Sure.
I mean, I remember like looking at one of the. Let me actually quickly just find that Cato. Did you read that Cato Institute article about you guys?
Yeah. The FedCoin, right? So.
Yeah, comparing it to like FedCoin. I mean, just want to quickly share the screen.
By the way, when did you get to know NuBits? Was it recently?
Well, basically, what happened on my side was I learned about Bitcoins. I think the first time I heard about it was 2009 at the end of the year, and somebody told me, they made this cryptographic system and they use proof of work to make this certificate that is like you can prove it. And then I thought and I told the guy, well, what's to prevent a double spend? And clearly he didn't understand it. I didn't understand it. I thought, stupid idea. Screw this. I'm not going to think about it, which is horrible because I mean, I really would have like lived on an island that I just Googled. But anyways, so basically that's the first time I heard about it. And then the second time I heard about it was in 2010 somewhere. And I thought like, you know, I read this book by a guy called Mike Maloney called Investing in Gold and Silver. And 2/3 of the book is monetary history. And I think a lot of guys who ended up in Bitcoin in 2010, 11 actually came there, like ironically, through this book. And Mike Maloney himself has been slow to adopt Bitcoin. But I saw that this is like all the hallmarks of stable money. You know, it's limited supply, it's honest, you know, it's user controlled. You know, it's opt-in, not like you don't get forced. It's push, not pull. People don't just take your money. You know, stuff like that. And I thought this is phenomenal. And then I was about it like for 6 months. Eventually, I decided, okay, I've got to like buy into this thing. So I ended up buying a mining rig, which was ridiculous. I mean, that's back when mining made minor sense. I mean, I wish I just took the money and just pushed it all into Bitcoin. At that stage, it was such a mission. I mean, South Africa, I don't know if you've ever had to do business with anyone in South Africa, but there are some really strange capital controls, some strange insistences that the government has.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, it's better now. There was a court case by the guy who runs the Ubuntu Foundation, Mark Shuttleworth. The central bank, like they arbitrarily taxed him 10% of all his money. They just took 10% of his money. So it took him like a decade, and it took him almost a decade to take them to court. But eventually he won, and they had to repeal a whole bunch of these really ludicrous, unconstitutional laws, which allowed them to do stuff like that. But anyway, I mean, back then what we had to do was if we wanted to buy Bitcoin, we had to open up accounts with Second Life, walk to an ATM, open an account at the virtual ATM teller, and then we could use that account number inside of Verwox. And then we could pay Verwox with PayPal. We could buy SSL, and then with the SSL we could buy Bitcoins. So that's like how
Very complicated.
Yeah, it was very complicated, and I mean the fees were ludicrous. It was crazy. Like the turnaround fees were something like, I think it was from 10 to 30%, depending on.
Wow.
And I mean, and then it was like crazy fluctuations as well. But I still wish, even with those fluctuations, that I freaking just sold everything I had and just pushed it into Bitcoin. But okay. But bygones. So that's kind of like how I got introduced into the thing, and I've been interested in it. And then I sort of like lost interest. I had some Bitcoin, sat on them, didn't do anything, and then suddenly I realized, holy crap! In 2013, I like made a fairly good amount of money here.
Sure.
And then basically after that, I sort of like got a little bit more, you know, I mean, it's sort of like I got a real believer wake up call and thought, yes, there's really something going on in this thing. So, so one of the things that I've been interested in specifically is, I mean, our country, I mean, I live in South Africa, and just above us, there's a country called Zimbabwe. And Zimbabwe, I mean, Zimbabwe is actually a very interesting place. I mean, it's the most literate country in Africa. It's got 90% literacy. The second runner-up is us, and we've got 80% literacy. You know, but they've basically had a dictator. You know, I mean, I don't want to call this guy a communist. It's a disservice to communists. You know, it's you know, he's just had one on the other, like really bad policy, which has been really horrendous to his people. And to my knowledge, I think there's something like 3 million Zimbabweans living in South Africa, right? So there are a lot of Zimbabweans here. And what's interesting about it basically is, I mean, obviously Zimbabweans they don't have access to our, you know, to our social security programs. You know, basically if a Zimbabwean wants to survive in South Africa, he's got to be productive, right? So they really like work very hard. They really like to take care of people in Zimbabwe who are really like not as well off as they would have been otherwise. So sort of like one part of my interest with Bitcoin has been, you know, how do you empower these people with Bitcoin? How do you like get them Bitcoin? How do you send money back? How do you do all of this stuff? And I mean, initially I was like very optimistic that it was possible and so forth, but they just didn't have like the necessarily the smartphone infrastructure to really run web wallets until very recently. You know, and not only that, but the price fluctuations of Bitcoin have been, you know, you really need like a whole remittance with enormous two pools of liquidity on both sides to get money in and transmit it out on the other side. So
right.
Yeah, so basically some friends of mine who are involved in a sort of a, done exactly, sort of like a trade union. Some of us have decided we want to see if we can get a local payment system up and running. We also only have 4 banks here, and there's only like, well, 5 banks now. There's like been one incumbent basically, but they have ridiculous rules, incredibly, high transaction fees for everything. So we've been looking at how can we actually use different technology to make the lives of some of these people like a little bit easier and hopefully make a small profit in the in the process. So sort of like my real interest in NuBits was initially the South African rand has devalued from, I think it was something like 6 rand. Okay, obviously it fluctuates, but it was 6 rand 30 in 2010 to 16 rand for $1. So that's like a collapse of 3-fold over a 6-year period. It's incredibly steep curve and everything. Not only that, but there's a lot of the government is one of the last explicitly communist intended governments on the planet. I think there's 5 left, and these guys are one of them. They sort of they inherit. There's a lot of freedom here. I mean, it's not a communist country, but the government really has a hell of a lot of communist plans. They really want to. If they had the opportunity, they would nationalize almost everything. The things that they have nationalized, like the rail system has collapsed. The power grid is busy collapsing. Every winter, the power just goes off for hours on end. It's like a joke from the Soviet Union's time. So stuff like that is it's very concerning. I try not to be negative about the place or anything, but it concerns me that I'm now old enough. I've seen I've seen stuff work, and now we getting into the situation with straightforward things like the power being on is no longer working. Now, anyway, sorry for the rant. Just the last thing on it, but one of the major reasons that that I think that the South African government, especially on local level, can maintain this is that what ends up happening is that if you have a bad manager, there's the city called Johannesburg, and Johannesburg has had fairly bad municipal management for it seems like the better part of 10, 15 years now. You see, the thing is, if your business ran at 5% loss every year, I mean, you wouldn't last long. Your family wouldn't be able to maintain that kind of a drain on whatever savings they had before that point. The problem with these situations is now what ends up happening is these guys have they run massive deficits. They don't really deliver services. And all that happens is provincial and national level government keep bailing them out year after year. Where had they been private institutes, they would have gone, sorry guys, we can't afford to keep you. We've got to replace you with people who deliver. And the problem with that is how the whole reserve bank system works is that they loan the government money from nothing at basically 0 interest rate, so they can keep kicking this can down the road, pretty much eternally. And that's kind of one of my concerns is that the shenanigans of the South African government have 50% to do with the fact that the Reserve Bank keeps bailing them out. It's a somewhat indirect process. It's not like they directly buy up, XYZ necessarily to save it. They have actually done that. Most, I wouldn't say most, but I've read the mandate of the Federal Reserve, for instance, and they really had to go out of their way to buy those credit default, what were they, the CDOs, anyway, but they had to go out of their way. The South African Reserve Bank, on its mandate, they can just buy shares straight off the stock exchange. So if you're a major corporation in South Africa and you're fairly well connected into the Reserve Bank, theoretically at least, I'm assuming this must have happened because it's in their mandate. You can say, you know what, guys, our share price is suffering a bit, and for the good of South Africa, print money, basically taxing the poorest possible people you can tax, and bail us out, and it's this perpetual stealth bailout. So that's kind of for me personally, that's kind of the main effect. And initially I thought
it's devaluating a lot the value of the rand, right? This continuous printing of money, right?
Yeah, I think the irony of the process is I'm not even really sure that the government has realized that they have this lever. What seems to be happening more though is that the people who are creditworthy get very cheap loans, which obviously increases the money supply. But the problem is that the poorer people are holding the cash. They don't have access to other things. They're not even aware necessarily of other asset classes. And what happens basically is that you have this funnel where you basically like keep vacuuming up the little bit of labor that people could save in rands and giving it to people who are credit worthy. That's sort of like, I mean, I wouldn't even say it was just the government printing money, flat out. It's sort of like a system that isn't really evaluated. You follow? It's not even like it was insidious by design, as far as I can see. So that's kind of like that's kind of like what seems to be happening is we are loaning all this money. It's a very similar process to what I understand happened in Japan up to 1989 about. You have all this freaking, debt accumulating, but for some reason in South Africa, it's like it's not hitting a ceiling. It just keeps on going, But anyway, just to get back to your initial question on this. So initially I thought my interest in NuBits would be, okay, well, either fork the network and start a new rand if the guys are not interested in a new rand specifically, or make a motion and see if they're interested in a new rand. But then I thought about it a bit, and I just thought well, since obviously, I mean, it seems like there's a minimum amount of critical mass necessary to make this thing happen, and we have a country that is completely dollarized. And it's one of the biggest remittance, corridors, well, in Africa, pretty much. I don't know about the rest of the world, but the fact that what happened with the Zim dollar was it eventually collapsed. People acquired enough dollars and rands and pulas over time, which is the currencies around them, that the Zim dollar collapsed. So now they've dollarized and they've started trading dollars. And what's now also happened is the government has now made a deal with China so that taxes can be paid in yuan. Right, so I think if you guys have a new yuan and you have a new dollar or a new bit, you can solve an incredibly large amount of problems for these people. Like, to give you another story from Zimbabwe, for instance, is a friend of mine who's in this. We basically we have a little startup that we're kicking off now, where we basically want to make these local payment solutions. He was part of a group who basically did. I believe it was data metering for a place called Econet, which is one of their cell phone providers. And he was telling me they only had $100 bills. That's all they had on them were these $100 bills. And I mean, it's $100 goes insanely far in Zimbabwe. It's really a lot. So they all went out. They had dinner for $20 or something. I think it was 3 of them, and the waiter didn't have change because this is 2-3 years ago, so the situation might be slightly different now. But he didn't have any change. So what he offered them was, he said, guys, well, I don't have any change, but I can show you a night on the town. Right, so he took them and they partied, I don't know, from 8 to 12, to the point where they said, we can't anymore, we've got work tomorrow, and he'd only partied out. I think the bill was $20, and they'd only partied out $50, and there was $30 left, and they told him, just keep it. We're not worried, just keep the $30. So there's no change, and there's these ridiculous ways of trying to, just accommodate for the change problem. And not only that, but the other problem as well is that, now people in Zimbabwe are printing dollars. They're printing US dollars, because obviously there's no, there's no real US counterfeiting office in, in Zimbabwe. So what's happening is people are printing, quasi-believable dollar bills. Okay. Obviously some of it is really dodgy, and then people would chuck that out or not accept it, and some of it is more believable. Yeah. No, I mean, it's you should hear some stories about Zimbabwe. It's amusing to the point of being farcical. I mean, it's one Zimbabwean friend of mine who was telling me, we went back, he visited some people there, and he says everything is illegal. He says everything, all human activity is effectively now illegal. He says you would be driving and then you get to a toll gate, and a toll gate is 2 guys who you assume are police officers, since they're dressed like police officers, and they've got 2 barrels on the sides of the road with a chain, and that is now the toll gate. Now you've got to pay the toll to get through, because obviously the government can no longer like really pay these people. They can't print money anymore. They really have very few entities left that they can tax. And they've got all these, I mean, there's a ban on blackberries in that country. You're not allowed to have a blackberry. They're very suspicious of blackberries. And
Why is that?
I suspect it's because of the role that blackberries played in the London riots and in the Arab Spring. But blackberries,
okay.
yeah. So they're scared that.
But they don't forbid the iPhones or the Androids.
No, they don't. So I mean,
I don't see the why, because you could start a revolution from Android as well, right? So
yeah, I know, but that's the irony of trying to govern by these ridiculously slow
that's
laws.
ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. They have Androids and they have iPhones. They have this thing they call the CIO, which is basically, I can't remember what it stands for, but it's sort of like a community KGB almost, So like, let's say for instance, me and you are sitting in a restaurant and me and you are talking, right? So me and you wouldn't like criticize. I'm not sure. This is from like a year or two ago. So I know the situation, they're shifting quite rapidly. But like, me and you wouldn't sit there in a restaurant and publicly criticize Robert Mugabe, because for reals, the waiter might really be part of the CIO and like go give us up somebody, and then we'd be in all kinds of weird trouble because we just gave our honest opinions about things. So it's a really like strange situation in that country, and it was really caused by the fact that the government could print money out of nothing to keep paying the soldiers and the police officers. Because if they couldn't do that, none of that would have decayed down to that like level. So anyway, what I would like to see basically is, I mean, with our whole startup, we'd actually like to gather some more information, make sure that we are actually solving a problem that exists. It's not necessarily the first problem that we'll tackle, but if we can effectively solve the change problem that they have. So in other words, they don't have physical change. Actually, my next question.
You imply that there is not enough liquidity. Is it the same problem?
Well, there's not enough change. That whole saying of change is inevitable? Apparently not. You can't get change. Like if you want to buy, let's say $1 worth of groceries, right? There is no $1 bills, right? So you'd have $10 if you're lucky. That's the smallest dollar bill that you could accumulate, right? So in other words, now you have to go buy $10 worth of groceries or accept that there's not going to be any change, that nobody's going to be able to get you a $5 and $2.
Because most people are not. I mean, they keep the $1 bill somewhere, or what's the reason for that?
Well, as far as I understand, though, what happened was that during the hyperinflation, people started accumulating these things. So obviously, they accumulated. Some of them would do work for like a US company, and they get paid in dollars. So they keep the dollars and they circulate the Zim dollars. Or they get money from a relative in South Africa and they keep the rands, but you don't want to like keep a large amount of this stuff. So they would typically have like a bunch of 200 Rand notes, or they'd have like a set of like $20 bills or something to that effect. And obviously, some of the smarter people caught onto this sooner, and they just started accumulating large amounts of it. So now you have large denominations circulating. And not only that, but the purchasing power of a US dollar in Zimbabwe is very high. Like a dollar goes, actually, well, again, I mean, now the prices have adjusted again partly because of this phenomenon. But so there isn't really like, and again, I mean, I'm not talking from first-hand experience here. These are things that I've heard. So that's kind of like the situation is there seems to be high denomination notes, but very not a lot of change, not a lot of like smaller stuff. You might be able to get more like Botswana Pula or South African Rand, but and then that's rare. And now you have to figure out what is the exchange rate today, et cetera, and it becomes a little bit of a challenge. So, I mean, what I was thinking, for instance, is, I mean, if you had the new Droid app in a city like Harare, what would the impact be? So maybe tell us a bit about where the new Droid app is at the moment.
Okay, yes. So yeah, NuDroid. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. Is basically an application that works on Android. That and it's basically a NuBits wallet that you can use to send and receive NuBits. But let's say that one merchant accepts only Bitcoin, you would be able to pay this merchant with NuBit because there is a conversion functionality inside that uses Shapeshift. Have you heard about Shapeshift?
Yeah. So in other words, it integrates with the Shapeshift API to if you want to pay somebody with, you just okay. So what does it link? It links Bitcoin to NuBits and NuBits to Bitcoin.
Yeah, let's say that you only have NuBits inside your wallets, but if you
Okay.
want to pay someone that only accepts Bitcoin, Litecoin, or any cryptocurrencies that are accepted by Shapeshift, you can pay with your NuBits.
Okay, and tell
And
me, does
you for a small fee of conversion, you would be able to do that, right?
okay, well that's pretty nifty. And tell me, does do you guys have a point of sale element to that wallet or not yet?
What do you mean by point of sale? Sorry.
Does it have a? I know some of the wallets have a point of sale mode, for instance. Like if you look at the Monitas wallet, you can change it so that it acts as a point of sale terminal. So in other words, you know, it prints a little barcode and it tells you what it was for and stuff like that. And then you can just like, you know, scan to pay type of situation. Just the reason that I ask is so that you can give that to store owners, you know, and make the process of actually like giving back. I wouldn't say necessarily giving back change, but you know, the process of payment is as smooth as possible.
Point on. I'm not familiar. I don't. I'm not sure I can answer this question. I'm not a
Okay.
Android user. I'm an iPhone user, and right
Okay.
now there's no such wallet for the iPhone. There is no plan, I think, right now. But you know, I wish I could. We had such a function wallet on the iPhone.
Okay. Okay. All right. So what was the other thing I wanted to ask now? Okay. So basically, you say you have Shapeshift. You already like have Shapeshift enabled at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, just hold on for 1 second. Okay. What did I do now? Sorry. Okay. So you have Shapeshift on that wallet at the moment. All right. So tell me something like what do you suspect would okay, how many active like NuDroid users do you guys suspect to have at the moment?
I'm not checking the numbers. Probably a few hundred downloads, probably.
Okay.
So that not that much actually, but you know.
Okay.
We
So
think that it's a good, even if there is not so many users, we think that it's very important to have such a wallet because after all, NuBits is for should be used for any kind of online purchase, or any, if you want to use that in the daily life, then you should have this wallet, right? So I think it's a very important investment for the future.
okay, how many accounts do you guys think you have actually? How many like active users of NuBits in general are there? If you
How
had
many
to take a
wallets?
wild
Yes,
guess.
it's a good question. I have no idea about that, but I can tell you, for example, about the number of transaction of NuBits every day. It's not that much. It's between 50 and 100.
Oh, you mean 15 and 100 transactions on the
On
blockchain?
transaction, yeah, which is not that
Okay.
much, right? So yeah, mostly for trading, right? So
Okay. And tell me something, what is the capacity of the network? Like I know Bitcoins can effectively do like 3 transactions per second, which is, I mean, that's barely a town. But do you know what the capacity constraint is of the NuBits network?
I read about that, but I don't remember the actual figure. So there is, Jordan Lee, he made the inventor of NuBits. He made a simulation and say that you know we will not be able to reach the level of transaction of network like Visa, for example, but we can get close to that. Now,
Okay. Okay. So in other words, you can't simulate the Visa, thing necessarily. Okay.
No.
So you're not really like sure where the scaling limit is. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, some people say that you will, in order to achieve, let's say, 1 million transactions per second, you would have to use this mechanism called of blockchain, open transactions, for example. But personally, I'm not sure about the feasibility of that, So, but some shareholders are interested in that. But,
Okay. And tell me something. Let's say argument, so what do you think the effect would be like on new shares and on the network? How do you think it would play out if you, in a year's period, went from like 100 transactions a day to 1 million transactions a day?
yeah. It depends on, obviously you will need much more liquidity, obviously.
Okay.
So, in terms of, in terms of buy side as well, we would have to increase the ability to buy back those NuBits, if people want to get back to Bitcoin, right? So it would put a lot of pressure on the liquidity provider, and we would have to have more money to fund that, right? So
Okay.
this
But
is
I
the
mean,
biggest problem, I think, of Nu, right? So the scalability depends on the ability to provide liquidity, and it's not only a technical problem; it's also an economics problem, right? So
okay.
we need to find and incentivize the providers, right?
Okay, but I mean, if the amount of people who actively like have real demand for NuBits increase, I mean, that automatically like increases, at least the incoming and outgoing liquidity pool organically. And a lot of people are interested in getting in, and a lot of people at the same time are getting, interested in getting out, and all the other incentives are there as well. Obviously, are you saying that on top of that you need additional liquidity, or I mean, is that not a problem that to an extent solves itself?
Yes, yeah, of course, yeah. If in order to cope with more demand, we have to find more providers, right?
Okay. All right. So my last few questions, I see we actually got to them, is like, what is like your, have you been following anything on Ethereum and the smart contract platforms?
Yeah, I've been following the project, and that was very interesting back at the beginning of 2014. I thought that was revolutionary, and
Okay.
but I decided not to invest in that ultimately.
Okay. Okay. Do you know if there's any like, because guys are working currently on a thing called the BTC Relay, which is a way to take Bitcoins from Ethereum, or at least Bitcoins from the Bitcoin blockchain, basically lock them and then have them trade around on the Ethereum blockchain, and actually then have them spent back out onto the Bitcoin blockchain if necessary. And they're
I heard
using
about that, right?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
they use HPVs for that. Is there, okay, and I know it's a very technical question. I tried to like find an answer. Do you know if like the HPV proof system would work for a proof of stake system like NuBits? Would you be able to actually do a similar thing, so use NuBits inside of Ethereum contracts?
So basically, you're trying to you implying you want to probably simulate NuBits inside the blockchain of Ethereum.
Yeah, no, not really like simulate them, but actually like how can I say, they
Connect.
get yeah, they get locked. They get locked inside of the. They basically get locked inside of the NuBits blockchain. There's several suggestions on how to do this. The one might be the simplest one is like you just have a multi-sig wallet, right? So the new shareholders appoint 15 signatories, of which 13 must agree to move money, argument's sake, right? And then they pay money. Then if you want money on the Ethereum blockchain, you pay it from there in there. Creates a account for you on Ethereum based on where the money came from, and now your money, your NuBits are now spendable inside of Ethereum. And then when you want to check them out, you go in the opposite direction again, and then your money gets paid out to your NuBits account.
Yeah, from my perspective, I'm not familiar with the technology, so I can't answer precisely. But I think it would be possible to do that, right? Because Ethereum is can simulate anything. It's a Turing complete language, so you should be able to do that, right? So, but I'm skeptical about the practicality of that and the feasibility. I think Ethereum is a very interesting experiment, and but it's very challenging, and they have a lot of problems in terms of scalability, and I think that overall that they are trying to do too many things at the same time.
Okay.
This is in contrast with the philosophy of Nu, because as I said, Nu is based on the template of PeerShares, and PeerShares is one of the philosophy, I think, is to do one single thing, but well, right? Because you create a blockchain dedicated to one particular problem, right? So Nu is taking care of the stability of cryptocurrency, but actually there is another. I'm not sure if you're aware of that, but there is another application of PeerShares which is called BNC exchange. Basically it's a decentralized exchange, and it's being developed by the same developer of Nu, and basically it aims at that. You're aware of this product?
Sorry, just say that again. Which product is that specifically?
Are you aware of this project called the BNC exchange?
No, not exactly.
No. Okay, so it's basically it's a decentralized exchange that will live in the inside the blockchain. So every buy and sell order would be specified inside the blockchain. This is the product that is being developed by the same developer as NuBits, and more. I think more than 50% of the shareholders of BSC are new shareholders. So basically, it's one of it's the most exciting project for new shareholders this year, according to a poll. Sorry.
Okay. All right. Well, Pascal, I think I'm going to let you go at this point. Thank you very much for answering all my questions. That was very nice of you.
Thank you for your time. And I hope I did great, but
No, I think you did very well. Thanks, man.
Okay, thank you very much, and talk to you soon. Also.
Okay, hopefully talk to you soon. Cheers, Pascal. Have a nice day. Hey.
Bye.
Bye-bye.